Dear Jesus, this man, he's incredible.
No one's that incredible.
No one's that good.
No, there's probably someone who is that incredible.
Everyone else. It's just us. Welcome to the Film Riot podcast. I'm Ryan Conley, and today on the show we have Josh Tanner, who is a director out in Australia. He's done a bunch of really great short films, including The Landing, which came out in 2013 or 2014, and it is one that we featured on our show way back when. And recently he's come out with two really great horror shorts, The Rizzle and Reverse. Both you can find right now by going to our episode page. You can find links for him there and links to his work. But Josh is a very talented director in a similar transitional phase to where I am right now. And he's doing a lot of very interesting things. So I thought it'd be great to get him on the show, pick his brain, and see what his trajectory has been like as well. But before we jump to that, I want to thank our sponsors, first of which is Westcott, who is the industry-leading lighting manufacturer that specializes in lighting and light control for filmmakers around the world. We've talked about them a bunch on this show and our show Film Riot. And actually out today is a review of their latest flexible LED system, which is the Cine RGB lights. And they're just incredible. Definitely jump over to our YouTube channel to see the full review on that. These lights can do pretty much everything. You can put them anywhere. They have magnets on the back so you can stick them to anything. Rigging them is so easy. There's so many options for you there. And now it's an RGB light with built-in gel presets, so you could just easily jump right to the gel that you would want to put on there without having to go through any of that hassle. It's just a really great light, so definitely jump over and take a look at that. And our second sponsor for today is Sound Iron. They're a premium developer of virtual instruments and sample libraries for songwriters, composers, and sound designers. Whether you're new to music production or a seasoned pro in film, television, advertising, video game, or music recording industries, they've got you covered. Sound Iron serves the best and brightest composers and artists in film and media today, and they just have a ton of options for you. I have their whole massive bundle, and there are so many really great sounds there. I do some composing myself, including selling packs like one we have on our store, the Blockbuster Scores pack, and I really love working with these libraries. So again, jump over to the episode page for this episode of filmriot.com/podcast and check out the links we have for you there for that as well. But now I'm going to shut up and jump right into it with Josh. Diving right in, what got you your start? Did you always know you wanted to be a filmmaker? Was it something you found along the way? And did you go to film school? So basically the origin, Josh.
I think like most kids, you find movies as a child that you gravitate towards and just become obsessed with. And, for me, it was the cliches. It's Star Wars, but it's also like Batman and, the Tim Burton's movies and Spielberg movies. And I think, my mum tells me that as a 3 or 4 year old, I would rent the same 3 VHSs out every time we went to the video store. It was
what were they?
Batman, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands. And
Nice.
I'm like 3 or 4 years old, so I don't know anything about directors, but those 3 movies were all Tim Burton movies, and I would rent them out constantly.
When I was younger, every birthday for like years, I would drive my family crazy by making them watch The Rocketeer with me. So it was like every February, they knew they had to watch The Rocketeer.
Oh my God, I love The Rocketeer. So good.
So good. Yeah.
So I mean, I've always had, quite an interest in filmmaking, just... Again, it's the cliche story of you grab your parents' video camera and go and recreate scenes from your favorite movies. And I think as a kid growing up, I was always like, I never really understood what a director was. I was always like, I want to be an actor, but I was never really in front of the camera. I was always holding it. I didn't understand what a filmmaker was, what this crazy sorcery was. It wasn't until high school when I started getting into like doing skateboarding videos and things like that, where I started to sort of understand the craft. And I did a little bit of, film through years 11 and 12 at high school, and a year of sort of vocational education outside high school. And then I pretty much just headed up to the closest. I grew up in a rural town in Australia, and then I headed to the nearest sort of metropolitan area that had sort of a film hub, and sort of just started working in the industry from the ground up. I sort of got into the camera department, just doing video split, data wrangling, and got into editing here and there. And, all these sort of years, I'd sort of also done little short films. So I was kind of like doing little pinpricks into the industry as I went along. And I eventually got to direct some commercials and just sort of build up my unit of collaborators, in particular Jade Vanderlei, who is my partner in crime. She co-writes with me and produces with me, and she sort of found me when I was about, or I found her when I was about 20 years old, and we've been making films together for the last 9 years, which has been a really fruitful collaboration that continues.
That's great. Yeah, and what was your, growing up, what was your first camera?
Oh, gosh. It was some kind of high-8 contraption, that needed, like, whenever you wanted to play it, you had to put the tape in another tape, then that tape went into the VHS.
I know exactly what you mean. Was that, oh, man. Yeah, Hi8 did that. VHS-C did that. That was the worst.
And I remember at one point, the exterior tape stopped working, so I was just like, well, shit. And I didn't understand cables and things. I was like, well, that's the end of filmmaking.
Or the panic you get when it gets near something too hot and the tape starts to warp.
Right.
It's just, oh God, no, it's bowing.
Eventually, it turned out to be a really good thing because I'd never really wanted to watch my films again. They were all just me filming my cats and things like that. Right? It was so embarrassing.
I did a lot of just either like short films starring me, directed by me, because nobody wanted to be in it, or I would just go around my house filming people, trying to make a story out of it and just annoying them. Absolutely. So I know exactly what you mean. So you did do some data wrangling, and I mean, we won't dwell on this, but you did data wrangling for Triangle, didn't you? The Melissa George film?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually a big fan of that movie.
Oh, really? That's so cool. Yeah, I
love that film.
I didn't work on a terrible amount of features when I was working in camera department, but I'm so glad I worked on that one because that's kind of the one movie that I did work on that I actually really liked. Like, it was such a cool kind of mix between sort of like The Shining and Ghost Ship, and it's really cool, really twisty little thing. And it was actually like, I got that job like within 6 months of moving up from the little country town. Like, so I like found my way into the industry here in Queensland, Australia really quickly. And that film was like, they had built, basically like there was a big spit, which is like an extension of like, so the ocean, it basically is an extension of land that goes out into the ocean that you can kind of walk out on, and it extends out into the ocean. But basically what they did was they built the front sort of third of an ocean liner out on the end of this spit. And it was this amazing set, which was just mind-blowing for me to see and sort of see them operate. And they also only built one half of the ocean liner. So everything that you see that's on the other side of the ship, they actually flopped it, and it was really bizarre, just like to wrap my head around everything. But yeah, that was a really cool film to work on. And they shot, big sets of like 1930s corridor, like ocean liner corridors at Village Roadshow Studios down on the Gold Coast. And it was just like, for me, like coming into the industry, very, very nascent, like it was just mind-blowing to sort of see that scale of a production. And like even in that's like, a low-budget production really, but like for me it was just like, wow,
Yeah, that's amazing. And how did you get into your first short films? What finally led to that? Was you found your collaborators and then you're just bringing them all together, hey, let's do our own thing?
Yeah, I did sort of out of my little film school, I sort of spent a couple of years just sort of saving up money and just to make the move away from the country town. But I did this one little short film called The Man Amongst Trees, which was this kind of little, it was like a horror kind of thing where there's two bushwalkers they're bushwalking, they find this really creepy ass black clad figure with a white weird face. And it was very Slender Man-ish, but I did it like 2 years before Slender Man, or 2 or 3 years before Slender Man was even a thing. And it was my first kind of like play with genre and horror. And basically it got a lot of attention from just the festivals that I'd sent it to. I didn't really put it online or anything. And my producer Jade saw it, and she was just like, "Yeah, this is my jam." She likes the tone of it, and we started working together from then on. It's kind of one of those shorts where I'm like, part of me is like, just put it online. Like it'll be nice for people to see. And then I'm just like, no, they can't see my old work. It's not allowed.
Keep it secret. I understand that completely. I have a couple that I pre-Film Riot days that they're never going to see the light of day. And then I have a bunch post-Film Riot days that I wish never saw the light of day. But they're online. There's no going back. But jumping into The Landing, which is the first short I saw from you,
sure.
How did that one come about? How did you make that one happen?
Yeah, so after sort of teaming up with Jade, we made a few short films that I won't mention the names of, but I feel like with my film school, I did such kind of like rudimentary film school in the country town I grew up with. I like to say that I entered the Jade Vanderlei Film School because like when I started working with Jade, we sort of pumped out a few shorts that were very much my film school, and one of them was called The Foal, and it was, I'm even embarrassed to say sort of the logline because it's so weird. No, I'm going to say it. It's a young girl finds this, like a 5-year-old little girl finds this deceased horse and thinks it's alive, and it's really twisted, but we got a really good performance out of the kid, and it went to like Palm Springs Short Fest, and it did quite well. It didn't won a few awards at like small festivals and stuff, but it really kind of was like a good, okay, cool. That's kind of, filmmaking, this team that we've got here is working. But then I sort of had come up with an idea. I've always been obsessed with like space and like, space travel and stuff since I was a kid. And I just remember, you know what? It's tough. I don't want to give the intro of how I came up with The Landing if people haven't seen it, but I guess people have probably seen it.
Well, if you haven't seen The Landing, stop, go watch it, come back, and then you're good.
But yeah, I've been, basically when I was a kid, I had two things I was really like fascinated by. Was the landing of the capsules. I would always draw the little capsule with the the balloons when they'd float down and stuff. For some bizarre reason, like a normal child would draw a fucking rocket, sorry for swearing, it would draw a rocket ship flying up into space, and I would draw the capsule coming back down to Earth. I don't understand why. It's very strange. And the other thing I was obsessed with as a child was cosmonauts. And it just kind of had been something that had been floating around my mind. I'd watched the Riot stuff a night before, and then I had this dream of like this man being in the middle of a barren field, digging on his hands and knees and uncovering a space capsule. And I was just like, what the hell? That is insane. And then we kind of just sort of reverse engineered the plot from that. And so that present day element of the film was actually the first thing that kind of sprung to mind. And then we kind of did a little bit of a, Back to the Future storyline, kind of where the kid thinks it's an alien, but it's really not. And it just kind of was like that great coalescence of all like the best kind of references that you grew up with, all sort of merging together, and actual conspiracy theories of lost cosmonauts sort of working together. It was just this crazy thing. And we developed the script for a couple of years because it was like not something we were super convinced we could do, really cheaply, because it was like set in America, and obviously we're from Australia, and houses and locations don't look like America over here, the Midwest of America. So we did end up needing to sort of get a bit of money, which took time, but was really good because we developed the script and we really honed it and whittled it down. I remember at one point in the script there was like the people that owned the farm in the present day were really pissed that the old version of Edward was there, and they tried to stop him. Like it was way more sort of intricate, and we just kind of like whittled it down. But we ended up getting the funding from what was called a Screen Resource Centre here in Australia, which is like a government-funded sort of like arts company that supports young filmmakers. And we got about probably $10,000 US. And then from that, we used that like a little bit of a starting off point, and then we went to sort of private investors, people that I had sort of done.
Okay,
yeah,
good, because you said 10,000 and I was like, there's no freaking way.
No. Oh, God, bro.
I was panicking a little bit.
Impossible.
Like, dude, Jesus, this man, he's incredible.
No one's that incredible.
No one's that good.
No, there's probably someone who is that incredible.
Everyone else. It's just us.
But yeah, no, we definitely had used that like bit of money as kind of like a starting off point. And like actually, Jade was telling me, because Jade, she, and Jade co-wrote The Landing with me and she produced it. When we were going into that, she told me, we got to treat this like a feature. If we get this particular bit of money and sort of, okay, it says, we've been given money by a government funding agency and that shows sort of confidence in us, then we can go and use that as our argument to get more money. And so that's kind of what we did. And we built the budget up to be about $70,000 US. And,
okay.
Probably actually about 65 actually. And
yeah, I mean, that's still low for, the quality you guys pumped out.
Oh, thanks, Dan. But yeah, so it was pretty nuts that we managed to pull it together. It was all from people that I'd sort of worked with and, editing corporates for and stuff like that, who were like, had a real interest in filmmaking that, we gave them an executive producer credit. They came on set. They were a part of the process. We showed them the edits. They got, we made it, obviously a full-on sort of experience for them. And it was great to have them involved, And so, yeah, so we had the money. We put the shoot together. We got to shoot at, Village Roadshow Studios. And but the thing is, it was this crazy thing where we kind of went and we shot at a barn location, which was actually built for Bryan Singer's Superman movie, Superman Returns. And they had demolished everything but the barn, basically. There was a whole farmhouse and everything there, and it was very like old looking sort of Americana style barn, just isolated sitting in this field. And we were just like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's a shame there's nothing else around. But what that forced us to do then was to sort of figure out how we could incorporate that structure and sort of use visual effects to sort of build a location around it, which was something I had never done before. So we went and shot that, and then when we were in the studio, we built like a porch, basically, a facade of the farmhouse, and we filmed with that. And then in post-production, we composited the barn and the porch and a matte painting of the farmhouse, which went around the porch set together. And then we went out and shot some wheat fields and put them in. And it was just as, I'm still, even to this day, blown away that we managed to pull it off.
Yeah, it's pretty seamless. I had no idea.
Yeah, but we had to do it because there was no other way you'd really buy, like the architecture of farmhouses over here in Australia is nothing like in America. So you just couldn't buy it, and we didn't feel like the story worked in Australia. We had Red Fear, fear of the communists in Australia as well. It just wasn't on the same sort of level as in America at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we did the film and we premiered at Sitges Film Festival and won Best Short, and it did really well for us, like crazy. It was certainly for a film as long as it was, like 18 minutes. It's typically tricky to sort of get into festivals, and we got a lot of rejections. As that like list of our festivals looks super great and like awesome, we got rejected from so many festivals.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of surprising, actually. But, I mean, you released that. It did really well. It was all over the place for a second. I felt like I was seeing it everywhere. And I assume you got some decent attention off that short film.
Absolutely. It's definitely got some sort of meetings and inquiries about stuff. The thing that I would sort of take from The Landing was like, when we dropped it, I didn't have any material ready, like feature-length material. And that was like, that's really, you got to really strike when the iron's hot, I've learned. And
oh, man, 100%.
Yeah, and it's like, I had lots of ideas and things. Like, I certainly went into it with a sense of like being able to pitch to people kind of what I want to do next and stuff. But there was nothing kind of like, I think like when you put yourself out as a writer-director, you're expected to be the one that's generating material. I feel.
Right.
And that's tricky because once you're in that position, I think agents and managers kind of want to make sure that if that's what you're selling yourself as, then you can deliver on that. So I think that in my case, like, you know, it was fantastic to have, you know, all of that interest, and I got a US manager from it who we parted ways amicably. But basically, it was tricky. I just didn't have the material ready. And I
know exactly what you're talking about. That exact thing happened to me. Actually, I think the same year, because The Landing came out in 2013, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Did the festival from October to November. So October 2013 to November 2014, and then we released it on Vimeo on December 2014.
Oh, okay. So it was a year later, but I released Proximity in like 2013. And the same thing happened to me. I got a lot of attention off of it, but I just wasn't ready for that. And I didn't have anything like ready to go. Like I had, you know, you always have a bunch of, hey, this would be a thing like this would be really cool. But I didn't have anything ready to go like, hey, here's something I want to make right now and let me pitch it to you. So it was like a lot of, you know, small meetings with me being like, you know, I want to make movies. And they're like, cool. Well, you know, and it always ends the same way, doesn't it? It's like, well, you know, let's keep in touch. You know, definitely send me something once you're ready.
Absolutely.
You're like, which is a nice way of saying like, yeah, well, you done screwed up. Bye.
You know, it's good. Like I think that managers and agents generally do sort of keep tabs on talent, that they feel like whenever they feel like they can sell someone, they will pounce, you know, and it's like, but then it's frustrating because sometimes you see things that, you know, you'll see filmmakers and shorts that you're just like, well, what was it about their work? And, you know, I mean, it's, you know, but even being objective when you can kind of look at, you know, filmmakers that have kind of had that instant online success. And I think a lot of the times it is that sort of, if you're going out as a writer-director, they expect people to generate material. That's it. Because that is such a, like, agents and managers love that. They love when people can sort of generate their own material. So I think it's...
I mean, I've experienced recently, because I've always pegged myself as a writer-director, but I've experienced recently talking... There's not a lot I can say, so I'm trying to be cautious.
Sure.
I mean, we could talk offline, but I've experienced recently with some, you know, behind-the-scenes conversations just with managers and stuff wanting to pair me with writers, which is a first for me. Usually my experience has been exactly what you're talking about. It's like, well, what do you have? But recently it's been kind of like, well, would you like to pair with this person? And then reading their material, and that's been really different and interesting.
Yeah, like you know, it was such a good sort of process to go through releasing The Landing and kind of getting a sense of what you can sort of how you can open doorways, but what you kind of need to be prepared with next to follow through. Yeah.
And did you see those doors start to open once you put it online, or were the festivals also doing that for you?
I would absolutely say online. Really, the festivals were only useful as badges you could put on your online.
Yeah, totally. That's what I hear from everyone too, which is interesting. It's just a totally different landscape now.
And that's not to sort of take away from what the experience is of going to a festival.
Oh, sure.
And getting to sit there with an audience and getting, you know, it's just, other than, you know, the awards that we won, which was fantastic to win those, and a couple of cash prizes, and they're fantastic, especially when, you know, you put, you know, so much money into marketing these shorts at festivals.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity that, you know, to see it on the big screen. But, you know, I'll be honest, like the Rizzle and Reverse we've decided not to go the festival route, because I don't feel like that's the audience for, you know, like I just kind of want to get it straight to the audience. And I feel like, you know, that direct response is really great. But I would absolutely say that festivals have their place, and I feel like it's very useful for, if you would say like you had a movie that you'd spent tons of time on that you felt was a big screen film, take it to festivals, see what you can do. If you can rack up your little laurels to stick on your online thing, then that really does work. And it does attract people's eyes when they see a film that has those on the cover.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm going to pause right there to again thank our sponsor, Westcott, who are the originators of that flexible LED system that I'm gushing all over all the time. But they also have the Icelight 2, Scrim Gem Cine, and Fast Flags. Westcott continues to develop new products with the expectation of durability, portability, and high-end results. Whether you're just getting into filmmaking or you are continuously on sets of feature films, Westcott has and will continue to be there for all of your lighting needs. And like I've said a ton, I've used them on every project that I've done for the past, 5 years. And these flex lights and ice lights are just so versatile, especially when you're in an indie realm. These things are just godsends. I took the ice light one time into this dark forest area, pitch black night, no other lights other than the ice light, and we had an A7S, and we shot an entire scene that cut together with Alexa footage, and it just worked perfectly. And I think that's some of the stuff that they do best. So definitely jump over to filmriot.com/podcast and check out the links that we have for you there, including that review that I was talking about earlier. But now let's jump back into it with Josh. Did you find, was it views or publication that sort of got people taking notice of you? Meaning, like, was it the fact that it was just getting a lot of views all at once and somebody ended up finding it? Or is it the fact that like different blogs or other places were posting it that people ended up coming across?
Yeah, no, it was definitely the blogs. I would, because I'd hear like, I'd have one sort of exec that would be like, oh, I saw you short on the Awesomer, or I saw you short on Gizmodo, and it was like, oh, cool. So that's kind of where, I'd hear where these people were finding it. So then I realized, well, you've really got to, and those particular sites, I was the one that spent the time to find these websites, find out who the editor was or an editor, and email them and go, hey, here's my short. It's just released, blah, blah, blah. And I'm so thankful I did, because, then it directly leads to that particular person who ends up contacting you.
Yeah, that's my exact experience too. I think I talked about it recently in one of our other podcasts as well, but it's like it hasn't seemed to matter how many views a short film or anything that we put out does. It seems to only like really get attention when we get something like in sci-fi, or like you said, Gizmodo or IO9 or whatever it is. That's when all of a sudden we're, I'm getting emails and people reaching out. It's always those things. So it's like with Ballistic's starting to get more views now, because our shorts do something weird too. It's like up front there's a really slow start and then they all of a sudden pick up. Like I have this one short, Ghost House. It's almost at 2 million, but for the longest time it was like 100 and something thousand, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, I can't even track back what happened, because I would love to just make that happen for all of them, but all of a sudden they just start taking off like 6 months to a year after we post them. Then they start really pulling in views, and it's like, what's happening? Where was this in the beginning? But what's interesting is I never get contacted later. It's always up front when there's little to no views. With Ballistic, I got quite a bit of contacts from that, and that was like before it ever even hit 100,000. So I just think that's really interesting. And I did exactly what you did as well, which I learned from my previous short films is, reaching out to the right people. Hey, here's my short, and customizing it to them, of course, not copy pasting people. And that's really been the biggest source of success for me as well.
Yeah, for sure. It was, I didn't have anyone to sort of learn from either. So it was really like just racking my brain to sort of hunt around who, looking at different shorts that had sort of done well, and seeing the sort of the blog sites that had, and then finding the editor and where's their email address, or hit them up on Twitter, that kind of thing. And it's a lot of work. It is so much work. Like, if I'm ever lucky enough to make a feature film one day, I'm so looking forward to a marketing department dealing with all that stuff.
Yes, because you're like, I really need to be finishing the film, but I also need to be doing this. It's just like, yeah, man, just being all departments is a little hair-raising.
It's so funny when you're like, when you're using Facebook or Twitter or Instagram to kill time, but then when you're forced to use it, you're like, oh,
it's so much work. Yes, we are kindred spirits. I completely understand you. But then, you had another short after that, but then came the Rizzle, which I want to talk about because I think just how this happened and what exactly it is very interesting. So Hulu reached out to you for this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect kind of segue with what you were saying about like the random kind of spike of interest, in the sense that I just got reached out to by a sort of a freelance executive who sort of had done some work with Fox. Fox has a sort of content studio called All City, and they got this guy, Todd was his name, to basically curate a bunch of filmmakers who had done shorts that he thought were cool, basically to pitch horror ideas to Fox. And Todd reached out to me and said, loved The Landing. And I was like, oh, cool. You're that film from a few years ago? Right on. And,
yeah.
he was
which
like,
one?
Yeah, which one? That one. Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the one with the dead cosmonaut, right? And then, so I was like, yeah, cool. Okay, well, we'll sort of scour some things together and see what we can come up with. And we put together, Reverse was something that we were already working on. And we were pretty much like set to go in like a week or two to shoot. And so we thought, well, do we put that in? And we were like, yeah, we'll put that in. But then we also had a script, which was the Rizzle, that we had submitted for another film funding thing a year prior for the Sydney Film Festival. They have a film fellowship. Basically, they shortlist 20 filmmakers, and then they go off and write a script, and then they'll fund 4 of the 20. And we wrote the Rizzle, and we didn't get picked. So it was kind of like, it'd be good to make that one day. And so, this opportunity came along and we put the script in, and then we didn't hear anything. And for a little while, I had a Skype with the execs at All City /Fox. And that went really well, and then we didn't hear anything. And so we went off and made Reverse, and we were like, well, if they come back and say we want to make Reverse, we'll be like, ta-da, we've already shot it. But we were in the edit of Reverse, and then suddenly we got this email that said, Hulu really dug the Rizzle, and it was like, what? That's crazy. So we like down tools on Reverse and jumped headfirst into the Rizzle. And I swear I've made, TV commercials in longer time than we made the Rizzle in. Like, it was such a quick turnaround. But there was something incredible.
What was the schedule for it?
Well, it was like, I think we were greenlit. Let me rack my brain now. I think we were greenlit in the middle of August, and we had to deliver it at the middle-ish of September. So really it was a month, but that was like refining the script, doing an animatics so we knew everything would work pacing wise and everything, then casting it, designing the dance, doing everything, shooting it, putting the cut together, the whole shebang. And maybe you'd think a month is a lot of time.
Including post-production, right?
Including post-production, exactly. So, maybe people think, a month is a lot of time, but like, for me, usually I drag post-production on a little longer than, just because I like to, it's just like any filmmaker likes to sort of spend time and, sometimes show it to friends and go, what do you think? And then, all of that kind of process. But we pushed it through really quickly. But what was really great with the process was it was effectively a studio film. Like, it was being done through Fox. So it was like, we had a production executive, we had a production supervisor who we dealt with, in terms of things like cash flow and stuff like that. But the executives that we were dealing with were very much like a studio. Like, it was the studio filmmaking experience, just in a sort of a microcosm, just on a short film. So we sort of shot and we involved them. We showed them who we were casting, and then we shot and we well, even back to the animatic, actually, like I showed them the animatic and they sort of had a few comments here and there, and it was so useful for them to kind of see what the thing would be, because my animatics usually end up being quite close to what we end up with the final product. And then when we got into the edit, Fox were really great with notes and sort of helping us to sort of like tighten the edit, and which was interesting because like we originally had that in the short, the girl was visually given a little more context as that she was actually a dancer, and she had like trophies and photos on her mantle of her as a dancer, because the actress Holly is actually a dancer. So we had all of that stuff in there that actually gave, you went, oh, okay, now I get why she does the Rizzle, because she's like, her ego's being challenged, and she's like...
challenge accepted.
Right? So it was actually a really interesting process to go through the edit with them and figure out, well, with a short this short, you don't really need that information. You just need the absolute bare essentials. So it was great. It was a great process to have them, and I feel like the film is definitely better because of their involvement and their process. So we basically sort of went through, and from green light to completion was a few days shy of a month, which was crazy for me. I'm sure people pump stuff out way quicker, but it's not usual for me. But
well, when it's as polished as that, that's a very short time frame.
Yeah.
But it seems like such a great experience of, it's basically a studio short film. So you got like sort of you got to dip your toe into what that world would be like. So it just sounds like that was also just great education.
And interesting, like I keep saying that I direct commercials. I do. That's kind of my bread and butter here in Australia. I direct TV commercials, and I do a lot of work for theme park companies up here. And what I found really interesting in sort of comparing the process of working with an ad agency or a client to studio filmmaking is that sort of sense of collaboration and sort of an understanding that you are making a product for someone, that it is someone's product. Like when you sign that contract, that film ceases, unless you're Christopher Nolan, that film ceases to be yours and you cease to be in complete control of it. But instead of kind of seeing that as a negative, we definitely sort of thought, well, look, no, let's use this as a really great part of a step forward in our career to kind of collaborate and kind of see what this process is. And it was awesome. So, I was primed for it by having sort of worked on commercials where you are making a product that has an ultimate sort of delivery. It has, a form that it needs to hit for that particular client, and you will go and do that, and you will work your creative freedoms within what you can. And I find that's really wonderful, a wonderful process to sort of go, walk away with something that you feel like satisfies the people that put the money together for that particular piece of filmmaking. You got to express what you wanted to express in it as well.
Yeah, sort of leaning into that collaboration instead of pushing against it, just utilizing it.
Absolutely.
That's great, man. And just going back, just because I'm curious, how do you put together your animatics? What's your process there?
I draw storyboards. And actually, it's become so much easier since getting an iPad. I used to draw like on paper and then go and scan, and then I'd just like hit the scanner every few minutes, and like it was so long. But now it's great. I use the iPad with the Apple Pencil, and it's really just drawing frames and then making alterations to a frame, like a head turn or stuff like that, and then it'll literally just be image cutting between images. And I have my ancient MacBook Pro from 2009 with Final Cut Pro 7.
Whoa! Damn! You're keeping it classic,
bro.
I can respect that.
I just bring those images in, and but actually, what I find is really useful in the sense of sort of cutting horror and stuff, like, cutting an animatic of horror, you get to sort of put in sound effects like footsteps and and you get to build an animatic that is really quite immersive and can really draw you into the story. So it was really useful for everyone, especially, considering this tight turnaround we had. to really just get everyone on the same page, to really get everyone aware of what it is that we were making and its potential effect of, what sounds could work and how, I suppose, little you needed. And I think that's often the thing with horror is the less you have in moments, the more an audience sort of invests their dread in something.
Exactly, because they get to fill in that narrative.
Absolutely. Like, you can't show them something that is scarier than what is in their minds, because the fear of the unknown will always win.
Yeah, it's a super interesting way to kind of tap into the same idea of what you get when you're reading. Like, when you read, it's so scary because you're filling everything in. So the most frightening looking thing to you is what you're going to construct. You know what I mean? It's not being shown to you, somebody else's interpretation of what's terrifying. So I've always found that when doing like horror of any kind, that doing that, holding a lot back and showing very little and just letting their minds run wild, even when I'm watching horror, that's what creeps me out the most as well.
Yeah, and I think because the Rizzle was so specific to me in terms of my fears, I've always had this weird fear of the 1920s.
Of dancing.
Like, of creepy, like, I don't know what it is, like, it's either... what it is, I think, like, when those actors or dancers or anything, whenever they were photographed or on film, they would have this pale makeup on them that made them look like they were a dead body or a ghost. And
they acted so unnaturally.
Absolutely. So and then you add sort of the gold ballroom sequence from The Shining, and, you've got, like, the Fats Waller music from Eraserhead, or even some of the David Lynch stuff, like he's dabbled in his freakiness of the 1920s. Like, I've just become so obsessed with the freakiness of the 20s. So, I was like, oh, I hope other people have this fear as well. So it was really cool to sort of like go through that process to try and cater for, I just the whole time I was just like, oh God, I hope people don't go like, oh, what's scary about dancing? What's scary about a guy with a top hat? I don't get this.
Yeah.
People have reacted, so it's great.
Yeah, no, it worked on me. That ending was, I think I told you, I got goosebumps going on there.
Oh, awesome.
Which reverse I did too.
Oh, thank you.
Do you know when you're putting that online yet?
Right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bloody Disgusting have just sort of gone out with it. So they've just done they've led the charge, and they've just posted it out today.
Great. Well, we'll add that to the episode page for this episode so people could find that there as well. How did that one come about? I mean, was that like ultra low budget? Were you able to like secure some funds for that one?
That was ultra low budget. So that was, the genesis of that was way back, start of last year, really, like, that film fellowship I was telling you about, basically, was sort of like trying to cobble together ideas for that. And, just in the sort of stream of consciousness of like thinking of, I knew I wanted to do something like with a ghost. I wanted to do, because that's my favorite type of horror film, is supernatural, paranormal stuff. And it's
just the unknown behind it that's so terrifying.
Totally. And
I think when aliens are handled, when aliens are handled that way as well, like Signs kind of did it, where it's like it handled in a supernatural sort of very unknown, don't show it sort of way. It's just, it's skin crawling.
For sure. I think that what people find most scary about paranormal stuff connects to people's fear of death, really.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting, because it's almost like, when you think about it, it's like, it's almost a positive thing, because it's saying that there is some kind of existence after
yeah, you
death.
Can be fine. You keep going. You get to just screw with people.
You may be
afterwards.
you may be a tortured entity, but whatever. You still get to retain consciousness.
You're gonna want to kill innocent people, but it's fine. It's fine.
So yeah, I mean, it was just kind of stream of consciousness, trying to figure out ideas and stuff, and I kind of stumbled across this idea of, maybe like, what if you were in a car and you had one of those reverse cameras and you saw a figure in there that you couldn't see any other way? You look, and just kind of sat on that for a little while, and I told Jade about it, and then we kind of went to the Rizzle and just sort of forgot about it, and then Jade was like, hey, I really dig that idea, and like, we should do something with that. And I was just kind of, I think I was, busy with some other writing project, that Jade was like, no, let's look at doing this, which is great, because Jade is much more sort of like The poor thing, she's like a professional production manager and a line producer. She does, big projects and stuff. And, she's used to hiring crew. The last thing she wants to do is do a little no-budget short film and like beg these people that she's paying proper money to come and work for nothing. But she was the one that was like, no, let's do this. This is really cool. So she went away and she wrote the script and came back with it early this year. And she was like, what do you think? We should do this. And I was like, yes, of course. So yeah, we just kind of went through the process of tweaking it, and I added some scares and some things in here and there, and we streamlined it, and then eventually we kind of what ended up we did was we piggybacked off a TV commercial that I had done, and we'd sort of gotten the crew off that and sort of got them to work for basically nothing, and just we found an underground car park. We shot it in one night. I was delirious by the end of it, but it was great.
That's great, man. I'm excited to see the reaction to it. I think people are really going to dig it.
Yeah, it was. For me, like I've been so used to like making shorts that kind of like sort of dabble with period period. Like The Landing was in the 60s. Wandering Soul was in the 70s or 60s as well. Like stuff that's period is inherently creepy. So I was like, well, what'd be really great is to like do something that's really modern and like with technology, distorting that and making that creepy. So that was a really sweet sort of challenge to have a play around with. And I think it works. I've seen people watch it that have just been like, I can't watch this. I need to stop watching this, and then they just cover their faces.
It's so funny, like horror is the only genre that when somebody says they can't watch it, you take it as a compliment.
I know, and you feel so weird.
I had to turn it off. Oh, really?
Like, sorry. Sorry,
why,
not sorry.
thank you. Yeah, exactly. Great, not sleeping tonight. You're like, well, your fault, not mine. So what's next, man? I saw on your IMDb that you were Splinter Unit director for a coming film called Danger Close.
Yes, so that happened this year. So that is a war movie so during the Vietnam War, the Australians and the New Zealanders were, I'm pretty sure, the only Western ally that came to America's aid in the Vietnam War, and not a lot of people know that. So it's quite a good sort of story to be told. In this particular battle, the Australian soldiers and New Zealand soldiers went up against an enemy force of 2,500 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers. And there were only like 100 guys, and they went up about that many. And in the end, I think only like 18 Aussies lost their lives, but they fought them off. And it's this amazing story. And it's quite a feat that this movie could even be made, because in Australia, it's really hard to get budgets anywhere north of like $15 million. And to make a war movie with that money is impossible. So they managed to scrounge together the least amount of money they could make that movie with, and they'd been trying to make it for years, and they finally got to make it. So I got on the production as the director, Creve Stenders, who he's got quite an eclectic sort of back catalogue of movies. He did I don't know if you've ever heard of the Red Dog movies, which are kids' movies, and then he did. He's done a bunch of films, but he's he's a really top tier director here in Australia. And I got on as his director's attachment, and he said to me, sort of in the meeting when I went to sort of apply for it, he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to get you to direct some second unit." And I was like, "Wait, what?" He was like, "Yeah, your shorts are great."
Come again? No, wait, what's a director's attachment? Is that an assistant?
Yes. So I guess it's like an intern, like a traineeship. So basically, like I got to sit on set and watch Creve work. So, I'd be in the video split tent. I'd watch the take. I'd watch him chat with the DP when they'd go out. And this was actually the most useful thing, was I'd go out and watch the blocking of a scene, which I think is so important. I think any aspiring filmmaker should really understand the importance of blocking a scene out so all of the crew and the actors naturally understand where everyone needs to be, where the camera needs to be, or multiple cameras need to be for any, particular moment in that particular scene. So it was so good to watch the crew sort of move around and sort of like, just sort of figure it out, basically. That was actually the most interesting part of that fly on the wall experience. And then, I did 2 days of shooting second unit. The first day was kind of like the more minor stuff where it was like, fingers on triggers and gun muzzles and trees blowing up and stuff like that, which sounds cool as hell. And it was, but it was not as exciting as the second day, where I won't explain what the scene is or anything, but I got to basically direct a couple of scenes. I mean, the live action portion of a couple of whole entire scenes that are in the movie.
Oh, wow.
So that was wild. That was really cool and a really rewarding experience to sort of do that. So
man, that's amazing.
It was really cool. So that's a nice little addition to my IMDb.
Yeah, for sure. And just an insanely educational process. And I'm sure a confidence booster too, because you're getting that direct hand view of, how it's done at that scale to inform. I've found that being involved in anything of a scale like that has just been sort of confirming on like, okay, I can do this and I know how to do this.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like a confidence booster in that way that it's like, okay, the things that I think are actually correct.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just learning from people, you just get to see and directing is very much problem solving. You're just kind of like, you're cutting through, you've got a machete and you're hacking through the jungle, and it's really useful to see other people do that. And you can kind of go, how would I do that? Is that what I would have done? Okay, that they've done it this way. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I should do that. If I'm ever faced with that. So it's so, like, I really would suggest anyone who has sort of a way to get onto a film in that kind of capacity, or, to be honest, even like the camera department is so useful. Like if you're like especially like a video split operator, you get to be near the director, and you may have to pull cables when they're changing setups and stuff, but you get to just be a fly on the wall and watch. So you don't even have to get like a fancy director's internship. Like you can get the same experience from pretty much any other crew role. So unless you always have to be offset, then that's not a thing.
Yeah.
But
you're just locking things down a block away.
Yeah, exactly. That's not fun.
Yeah, no, but you got to start somewhere.
You do, but then you can move into those roles so you can be closer.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So what's up next for you? Are you developing something? Are you concentrating on short films right now?
Yeah, I've got a feature, a horror feature, which I've just finished a nice treatment for that I'm really happy with. So hopefully that could be something I can make soon. And I've just kind of got a few different bits and pieces around, directing ads and just trying to build the body of work up. The Rizzle and Reverse were just such great sort of opportunities to sort of flex those horror limbs and, go, okay, I can build suspense and I can sort of drag an audience along. So, I'm excited to sort of get into, and make a feature. I feel I'm ready. I think I feel I'm ready. Like, I don't think I was ready when I was making The Landing. Like, I had production values and everything that looked feature quality, but I don't feel like where I was at. And I was, 25 when I made that short. Like, I wasn't ready then. Like, there was no way I could have helmed a feature at that age. But now, I definitely feel like I've got the experience and the maturity to sort of like, and I still have it. I've the maturity, but still a little bit of that kind of extra stuff that sort of makes you go further and be ambitious and all of that. I haven't lost that. I turned 30. You don't lose that. You don't have to lose that after you turn 30.
You're not going to bed at 6 p.m. yet. There's still time.
Maybe next year, but not this year.
Yeah, maybe next year. Not this year. Yeah, man, I can totally relate. I feel the exact same way. It was just like, back in proximity, like I was talking about when that stuff popped up, it was like, I wasn't even worried about it not going anywhere because it's just like, that it not yet, like if they give you that chair, it's not going to go well right now.
Yeah.
But it's like, you hit a point of experience where you're like, okay, yeah, I'm ready.
It's so much like it works in two parts. It's kind of understanding and feeling comfortable as sort of a leader of a film set and understanding the sort of the machinations of everything and how everything has to go together and making your days and sort of doing everything to schedule. But then there's the complete other side of it, which is like knowing what creatively needs to work and what you need to do to make that work. So it's really about balancing those two sides. I feel like getting that balance is absolutely crucial. And I wasn't there when we did the landing. I was, I had some great sort of like quality control filmmaking down, but I think the general sense of kind of running a whole crew and kind of like, that took some time, doing lots of commercials, a few more short films, and trial by error, really. And I think that's how you got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you clearly had the chops and the talent. You just needed to keep building your experience, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But so totally it's good now. We've got the Halloween thing, and hopefully we can keep racking views up for that, and that would be rad. I don't know where that will lead.
Yeah, man. I mean, my fingers are crossed for you, but I have no doubt you're going to be making your first feature very soon, and I'm stoked to see it.
Likewise, man. I think you're there as well, man. I can't wait to see your first film, and it's going to be very exciting. Love your work.
Thanks, man. Hopefully we do it at the same time. We could just send notes back and forth.
Sounds good. We should be each other's second unit director.
Done. Deal. All right, man.
Cheers,
Thanks for taking the time.
Cheers. Bye.
So that's it for today. And if you want to connect with Josh and see more of his work, again, go to filmriot.com/podcast and find the episode page for this episode. You can connect with me online by going to twitter.com/Ryan_Conley. And of course, if you dug the show, jump over to iTunes, rate it, leave a review, and tell your friends about it. That stuff helps us out a lot. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.